Please welcome Alice Cooper, everybody.
It's widely known that Alice Cooper is one of the most cherished and accomplished rock music artists ever.
I'm the only person that doesn't have to dress up like somebody else.
However, what may surprise you is that he attributes a significant portion of his success to one particular woman, his one true love. Join us as we have a look at the revelations made by Alice Cooper about the love of his life. With a raspy voice and a stage show that features numerous props and illusions, Cooper is considered by many music journalists and peers to be the godfather of shock rock. A performer who's drawn equally from horror films, vaudeville, and garage rock to pioneer a theatrical style of performance that has enamored audiences for decades. Alice Cooper, otherwise known as Vincent Damon Fernier, was born on February the 4th of 1948 in Detroit, Michigan. The son of Ether Maroney Fernier and his wife Ella May, the future rock star was named after his uncle and the short story writer Damon Runyon. Cooper's father was also an evangelist in the Church of Jesus Christ. The family resided in East Detroit, where Cooper attended Cantner Elementary School and recalled watching horror films as a child at the Easttown Theater. He also participated in the local neighborhood trick-or-treating on Halloween, which he considered to be the biggest night of the year. Following a series of childhood illnesses, the young man moved with his family to Phoenix, Arizona, where he then attended Cortez High School. In his high school yearbook, his ambition was to be a million-record seller. In 1964, the 16-year-old was eager to participate in the annual Letterman's Talent Show, and so he gathered up 4 fellow cross-country teammates and they formed a group for the show. They named themselves the Earwigs and dressed up in costumes and wigs to resemble the Beatles. They performed several parodies of Beatles songs that night. The 4 boys got an overwhelming response from the audience and then won the talent show. As a result of their positive experience, they decided to try and turn themselves into a real and actual band. They acquired musical instruments from a pawn shop and then proceeded to learn how to play them. Guitarist Glenn Buxton did most of the teaching, as well as much of the early songwriting, and the group would soon rename themselves the Spiders. They featured Alice Cooper on lead vocals, Buxton on guitar, John Tatum on rhythm, Dennis Dunaway on bass, and John Spear on the drums. In 1966, the Spiders all graduated from high school, and after that, John Tatum would be replaced by high school football player Michael Bruce on rhythm guitar. The band then released their second single, Don't Blow Your Mind, an original composition which became a local #1 hit. By 1967, the band had begun to make regular road trips to Los Angeles to play shows. The 4 boys would soon rename themselves Nas, and they released the single Wonder Who's Lovin' Her Now, backed by a future Alice Cooper track, Lay Down and Die Goodbye. Around that time, drummer John Spear had been replaced by Neil Smith, and by the end of the year, they then relocated to the city of Los Angeles. Then in 1968, the band learned that Todd Rundgren had a band called Nas, which was signed to a major label, and so they found themselves in need of another stage name. Cooper also believed that the group needed a gimmick in order to succeed, and that other bands were not exploiting the showmanship potential of the stage. The band then settled on the name of Alice Cooper, largely because it sounded innocuous and wholesome, in humorous contrast to their image and music. The legend is that the name Alice Cooper came from a session with a Ouija board, but the story is just untrue. It simply sounded like a good name to the band, and then Vincent would go on to adopt it as his own stage name. Although the future rock star from Detroit was excited about his musical aspirations, his father remained skeptical and disapproving of his son's unconventional dreams. His disapproval stemmed from his deep religious beliefs and the hope that Vincent would follow a more traditional path. Despite the lack of support, the young rocker was determined to prove himself. The name change from Vincent to Alice Cooper symbolized a break from the past and a step toward his theatrical rock persona. The band's early days were full of struggle, performing in small venues and facing numerous rejections, but these challenges only strengthened the singer's resolve to succeed. Over time, Alice Cooper's unique style and stage presence began to gain attention, laying the foundations for future stardom. The journey from a preacher's son to the godfather of shock rock is a testament to unwavering determination and resilience. It was also around this time that Cooper began to experiment with his own stage appearance. In his 2007 book, Alice Cooper Golf Monster, Cooper stated that his look was inspired in part by film. One of the band's all-time favorite movies was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, starring Bette Davis, and in that movie, Betty famously wears caked makeup smeared on her face and underneath her eyes with deep dark black eyeliner. Another movie the band watched over and over was Barbarella, starring Jane Fonda, and upon seeing the film, Alice Cooper has gone on record as saying that when he saw Anita Pallenberg playing the great tyrant in the movie, wearing long black leather gloves and switchblades, he thought that that's what Alice Cooper should look like. One night after an unsuccessful gig at the Cheetah Club in Venice, Las Vegas, where the band had emptied the entire room of patrons after playing for just 10 minutes, they were then approached and enlisted by music manager Shep Gordon. Gordon had seen the band's negative impact that night as a force that could be turned into a more productive direction. Shep then arranged an audition for the band with composer and renowned record producer Frank Zappa, who was looking to sign bizarre musical acts to his new record label Straight Records. For the audition, Zappa told them to come to his house at 7 o'clock. The band mistakenly assumed he meant 7 o'clock in the morning. Being woken up by a band willing to play that particular brand of psychedelic rock at 7 o'clock in the morning actually impressed Frank Zappa, enough for him to sign them to a 3-album deal. Alice Cooper's debut studio album, Pretty's for You, was released in 1969. It was eclectic and featured an experimental presentation of the band's songs in psychedelic context. Cooper's shock rock reputation developed almost by accident at first. An unrehearsed stage routine involving Cooper, a feather pillow, and a live chicken had garnered attention from the press, and the band then decided to capitalize on tabloid sensationalism. In the process of it all, it created a new subgenre, later known as shock rock. Cooper claimed that the infamous chicken incident at the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival concert in September of 1969 was an accident. And as the story goes, a chicken had somehow made its way onto stage and into the feathers of a feather pillow that they would open during his performance. Not having any experience with farm animals, Cooper presumed that because the chicken had wings, it would be able to fly. He then picked up the flightless bird and threw it over the crowd, expecting it to fly away, but the chicken instead plummeted into the first few rows that were occupied by wheelchair users who reportedly proceeded to tear the bird to pieces. The next day, the incident made the front page of national newspapers, and Frank Zappa phoned Alice Cooper to ask if the story, which was reported where Alice Cooper had bitten the head off the chicken and drank its blood on stage, was true. Cooper denied the rumors, where Zappa told him, "Well, do whatever you do, and don't tell anyone you didn't do it." It would be during the time that Alice Cooper was signed to Frank Zappa's label that a dancer by the name of Miss Christine became Cooper's girlfriend. Miss Christine, whose real name was Christine Furka, who had recommended Zappa to the group, died on November the 5th of 1972 from an overdose. Another longtime girlfriend of Cooper's around that time would be Cindy Lang, with whom he lived with for several years. Alice Cooper and his band would soon appear at the Strawberry Fields Festival near Toronto, Ontario in August of 1970. The band's mix of glam and increasingly violent stage theatrics would stand out in stark contrast to the bearded and denim-clad hippie bands of the time. As Cooper himself stated, "We were into fun, sex, death, and money when everyone else was into peace and love. They drove a stake through the heart of the love generation." In 1971, the band would release Love It to Death, which had proved to be their breakthrough studio album, reaching number 35 on the US Billboard 200 charts. It would be the first of 11 albums with the Alice Cooper name on it, produced by Bob Ezrin, who's widely seen as being pivotal in helping to create and develop the band's definitive sound. The group's touring show at that time featured a stage show that involved mock fighting, gothic torture modes being imposed on Cooper, climaxing in a staged execution with electric chair, with the band sporting tight sequined color-contrasting glam rock-style costumes that were made by prominent rock fashion designer Cindy Dunaway. Cooper's androgynous stage role had developed to present a more villainous side, portraying him as a potential threat to modern society. It was this extreme approach to performance that had earned Cooper legions of fans around the world. Cooper's unique performance style was not appreciated by everyone, though. In Britain, Labour MP David Blunkett called for the show to be banned, saying that he was horrified by Alice Cooper's behavior because it goes beyond the bounds of entertainment. The controversy spilled over into the German segment of the tour, with the German government actually succeeding in having some of the more gorier segments of the performance removed. It was also during the London leg of the tour that Cooper met with a near-fatal accident during rehearsal of the hanging execution sequence that occurs at the end of the show. Their follow-up studio album, Killer, released in November of '71, continued with the commercial success of Love It to Death, including further single success with Under My Wheels and Be My Lover. The summer of 1972 saw the release of the single School's Out. It went top 10 in the United States and to number 1 in the UK, and still remains a staple on classic rock radio to this day. The studio album School's Out reached number 2 on the US charts, selling over 1 million copies. The band solidified their success with subsequent tours in the United States and Europe, and won over devoted fans in droves, while at the same time horrifying parents and outraging the social establishment. In the United Kingdom, Mary Whitehouse, a Christian morality campaigner, had persuaded the BBC to ban the video for School's Out, although her campaign did not prevent the single also reaching number 1. Cooper had sent her a bunch of flowers in gratitude for the publicity. Meanwhile, British Labour Member of Parliament Leo Absey petitioned Home Secretary Reginald Maudling to have the group banned altogether from performing in the country. With a string of successful concept albums and several hit singles that followed, the band continued their grueling schedule and toured in the United States again. And once again, politicians continued to pressure groups to ban their shocking act, and it only served to fuel the legend of Alice Cooper further, generating even more greater public interest. Their 1973 U.S. tour broke box office records that had previously been set by the Rolling Stones and raised rock theatrics to brand new heights. The multi-level stage show by then featured numerous special effects, including billion-dollar bills, decapitated baby dolls and mannequins, a dental psychosis scene complete with dancing teeth, and the ultimate execution prop and highlight of the show, the guillotine. It was in the midst of the chaotic touring and recording schedules of the mid-70s that Cooper would meet his true love, wife Cheryl Goddard. The two met while Goddard was performing in the Alice Cooper Show from 1975 to 1982. While on the road, they began as TV-watching pals, but after a while, they started a romantic relationship and then married soon after. The nuptials taking place March the 20th of 1976. Alice Cooper would suffer from alcoholism for many years, which took a toll on his marriage to Goddard. She even once filed for divorce due to the strain in the relationship, however, was always determined to get her rock star husband back on the wagon, and the pair reconciled once he had gotten sober in 1984. Goddard even remarked to People magazine about Alice Cooper's alcoholism, saying that he wasn't going anywhere but down, he was never really drunk but he couldn't really function, and was like a living vegetable. It put a lot of strain on her because she had to sign the papers to have him committed. They then went on to have 3 children, daughters Sonora and Calico, and son Dashiell. The pair's eldest child, Calico, was born May the 19th of 1981, and she followed in her parents' footsteps and is a multi-talented artist who sings, acts, and directs. She even helped to choreograph her father's tour, celebrating his 21st album. Alice and Goddard's second child, Dashiell, was born June the 3rd of 1985. He's also a musician, and Sonora, the couple's youngest, was born in 1992. Despite her siblings' involvement in the arts, she's largely stayed out of the entertainment industry entirely. In a 2002 interview, Cooper stated that he had never cheated on his wife the entire time they had been together. In that same interview, he said that the secret to a long-lasting and successful relationship is to continue going out on dates with each other. In a 2019 interview, he said that he and his wife have a death pact, whereby they will die at the same time, which then sparked a flurry of headlines. However, Cooper later clarified his comments, telling USA Today that what he meant was because that they're almost always together, both at home and on the road, that if something did happen to either of them, it would most likely happen together at the same time. He then went on to declare that neither of them have a death pact, but more so, a life pact. After nearly 50 years of marriage, the pair are often asked about the secret of their relationship, and Alice said that being each other's home is the most important part. When asked during an interview in 2016 what had kept them strong over the last half-century, the rocker responded by saying that his wife is with him whenever they go out on tour. He stated that people will often ask him about the difficulties of going out on the road and leaving home, but his response is always that he brings home with him wherever he goes. Alice Cooper's career in the 90s and 2000s continued to go from strength to strength with album sales of over 50 million from his catalog of over 25 albums, as well as an induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Aside from his musical career, the 70s rock legend famously branched out into television and movies, with his most famous appearance playing himself in the Wayne's World movies, as well as providing his voice to an episode of The Simpsons. Cooper has contributed his likeness and over 700 voice lines to Alice Cooper's Nightmare Castle, a pinball machine released in 2018 by Spooky Pinball that also features 10 songs performed by Alice Cooper. Aside from the stellar career that he's enjoyed, he and his wife are still active in the humanitarian space as well. The couple began the Solid Rock Foundation in 1995, providing free after-school training for teenagers in music, dance, photography, and the arts, as well as vocational training in sound recording and stage lighting. The first of several teen centers would open in Phoenix, Arizona in 2012, and then later in Mesa, Arizona in 2021. Between all of his endeavors in music, movies, and philanthropy, he still has time to fit in a regular round of golf. The rock star, who has participated in a number of Pro-Am competitions, plays the game 6 days a week, off a handicap of just 4. It was through golf that he had enjoyed an unlikely friendship with country guitarist and singer Glen Campbell after they had become neighbors. They began playing together nearly every other day in the final years of Glen Campbell's life. So tell me, what do you think of Alice Cooper? And do you think that he wouldn't have achieved more if his wife weren't by his side? Let me know in the comments section down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Project Hysteria for more great videos like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.